Alright, so my name is Max Molen Marcus. So saya berasal dari Keningau, Sabah. What else usually do people introduce?
Kau punya profession?
Oh, terus profession lah. Okay, fine. So currently saya bekerja sebagai seorang pencara kanan di Fakulti Perubatan Universiti Malaysia Sabah. But before saya jadi pencara tu, actually I am also pakar perubatan kecemasan dan trauma di Hospital Queen Elizabeth II.
Oh, memang di Sabah saja.
Memang di sinilah. I mean, that's my current job scope lah. And as of now, saya memegang portfolio timbalan dekan, hal ehwal pelajar, alumni dan juga jaringan masyarakat.
Saya tertarik saya mau tahu journey kau.
Okay. From where?
Daripada habis tingkatan 5 lah.
Oh, okay.
Sampai jadi
That's
timbalan
a long
dekan.
story.
Yeah.
Okay, dari tingkatan 5 yalah, I think that's where we met for the first time lah, di Matrix Labuan. Then lepas matriculation Labuan, saya sambung degree di Rusia.
Oh,
Yeah, so from there saya pergi Rusia.
Yang pergi Rusia.
Yeah, first group yang bukan first lah, one of the first few groups yang started kena hantar pergi Rusia.
Ukraine, Rusia.
Because during time-time kita tu, semua orang mau pergi UK betul. But I think due to the cost return analysis bukan berapa bagus lah. Like it could have been better. So started to send people to Czech Republic, Russia, Egypt, Indonesia and Russia. And
Ukraine.
India.
Yeah,
di sana yang it started to be lah. So I was there for 6 years.
6 years.
Yes, 6 years. That one itself is a whole different story. Then saya balik pergi KK, completed my housemanship. My first posting di Hospital Ranau.
Tahun?
2012 sampai 2016. Di situ saya punya first posting as junior MO di Hospital Ranau. And then saya dapat pelawaan, invitation untuk jadi lecturer di fakulti medical, because at that time there were so many expatriate lecturers, so diorang macam trying to recruit local doctors. Tengok, are you interested to be a lecturer? Jadi saya kira macam menyahut cabaran, or that is actually what I like to do, teaching dari Matrix lagi sebenarnya lah. So after that saya join UMS in 2016. And then immediately saya pergi masters, clinical masters
di UMS.
4 years di USM Kubang Krian, Kelantan.
4 years?
Yes, 4 years. Full time in campus.
Pergi sana?
Yeah. So di sana it's a whole another story. Habis sejak sana tu, another interesting thing, I graduated di tengah-tengah COVID tu. So kami kena panggil COVID batch. 2020 November. So that's when yang baru kita dengar pasal COVID and everything. So after that, I mean during COVID tu di sana lah kami semua, I think everyone punya attention is with COVID and at the hospital. So not much planning was done. Life
UMS lah.
No, I mean generally everyone lah. UMS per se, no, nothing is going on lah. I mean research stop. Publication stop, everything stop. Everyone is just trying to survive. And then lepas itu bila dia sudah cool down, baru I think things started to pick up. Saya jadi ketua jabatan kecemasan. Yeah, because we were a small unit. So main cus dapat jadi ketua jabatan. And then from there on, baru 1 tahun saya pegang tu, terus saya nak jadi timbalan dekan.
So lepas habis master terus di UMS lah sampai
Yes, sebab memang staff UMS pun kan, jadi memang terus balik lah.
Tapi kau mention tadi kau di emergency.
Because saya ialah medical doctor and also medical lecturer at the same time.
Also dua role lah.
Yes, dua role. Most of us pegang dua role. So as of now, my colleagues and I, kami memang terbahagi. So ada hari-hari kami di hospital, or klinik, ada hari-hari kami di fakulti. So kira macam kalau compare dengan fakulti lain, diorang consultancy industry, ada hari diorang buat begitu, ada hari diorang balik pergi fakulti lah. So that's it. Yeah,
Timbalan
sampai
dekan tahun
last year.
last year
bulan 10.
So you still handle bahagian research?
Still, it's a KPI.
So
Research.
kau ada boleh ambil supervisi lah?
Ya, kena ambil. Bukan boleh, kena ambil.
Kena ambil lah. Okay.
Yeah.
So sebenarnya kita punya plan untuk interview ni adalah untuk mau luahkan reality medical student dan doctors lah kan. Kita just go straight to the point
Okay.
lah. So maybe we can start with you yourself lah. Your challenge mentally in pursuing study in medicine.
Okay. During
Any experience yang kau rasa paling berat dalam hidup kau yang kau experience?
I think I would say this is something that not I only experience, but probably a big number of medical students is the amount of things you need to study. It's really a lot. Yeah.
Things.
The subject itself is heavy and the expectation is heavy because orang expect kau akan deal with lives. So naturally the expectation is higher.
Yeah.
I mean, from your parents is
Logic.
another thing. From your doctors who are your lecturers is another thing. And lastly, your clients, your patients, are the expectations upon you. So these, I think, were one of the hardest things that I had to internalize and realize. So why I need to do good is because all of these people macam tu. Yes.
Ya, selama ini kita punya persepsi tentang doctors adalah satu profession yang sangat glamour. And then as time goes, kita nampak the struggles.
Yeah.
Ada doctors yang putus asa, ada yang even suicide, issue bully. So setakat mana kita punya mental health punya tahap di Malaysia dan maybe untuk Sabah kalau ada beza daripada keseluruhan?
Okay. Let me say it in this way. Saya boleh komen ini dari perspektif seorang doktor yang bukan pakar dalam bidang psikologi atau psikiatri. Okay. Tetapi saya boleh komen dari segi seorang doktor yang memahami situasi dan norma of the atmosphere of the medical profession dan juga sebagai seorang pakar kecemasan yang melihat kes-kes acute datang especially when it comes to psychological and psychiatric emergencies lah. So generally I think the main thing that we realize nowadays is that the awareness is exponentially increasing. Maksudnya, it is a buzzword. Semua orang tahu mental health is important and everyone is like trying to get the attention from that. Okay. So bagi saya benda ni dia macam what you call a double-edged sword. Macam it can be good but it can be bad at the same time juga.
How can it be bad?
Okay, good in a sense that okay fine, everyone's having awareness, so you know that thing,
untuk meluah semua
something begitu kan. But then when it is like so common, then you start to think like, do I actually have it? So you're trying to push that thing towards you. You're starting to think that maybe I have these issues because it happens to so and so, such and such. And then sometimes people often, overdiagnose or self-diagnose probably in a way that you think you have. And then it leads to probably a false belief that kau ada mental health problems begitu. And sometimes it's another dangerous thing is that it's actually a big problem, but you actually downsize it. Or vice versa. It's actually a small issue, but you overinflate it. So because of the buzz around mental health, so dia akan jadi begitu. Perceptions orang berbeza.
Ya, betul juga. selama ni saya sangka kan semakin tinggi awareness orang, semakin bagus kan. I didn't notice yang actually dia boleh make things worse juga bila kita terlampau. Oh, saya pun ada, semua ada. Okay, so tidak perlu buat apa-apa kan.
Like that,
yeah. So among doctors, rasanya apa the main factors yang contribute to this mental problem?
I'm sure that as a person who definitely follows, local news and what's the, buzz nowadays. So basically I would say our health system currently is having a big crisis, I would say, in the sense that we're talking about system dia. Sistem dia ada macam-macam benda yang I honestly think could be improved. Okay. But maybe we couldn't improve it due to many factors. So I won't touch each of these because it's a very big problem. Jadi one of those problems yang I think we can talk about is the workload. Yes, because of the system yang tidak berapa effective, so you end up with skewed workload. Some people get so much work. Some people get not so much work. Benda macam ni lah. And then that leads to, the belief that am I doing too much or am I doing less? And then that's one thing. And then kita sebagai manusia ni, we are not, we don't escape from the, reality of comparing ourselves. Sebab kita selalu tengok macam, kenapa doktor di negara lain lebih bagus? Kenapa doktor private ini lebih bagus? Ataupun sesama sendiri, kenapa dia lagi bagus? So this, sudah you are dari medical school lagi, you are very competitive. So dia terbawa-bawa sampai kau begini. So you want to compete, which is good. You want to achieve the best thing for yourself, but sometimes it eats up yourself. Gitulah.
Ya, adakah kita punya KKM ni memang mengalami kekurangan doktor? Are we producing low number of doctor?
It's a very tricky question to answer because I think the answer is yes and no. Okay. When we talk about ketidakcukupan itu, by numbers, I think if we ambil numbers saja, we somehow have a ability to record semua doktor yang ada di Malaysia ini, private, and then government doctors dan semualah, I think the ratio yang kita mau sebenarnya ialah 1 to 400.
1 to 400.
So 400 people ada satu doktor. Okay. So I think the ratio can be achieved. Even better, maybe 1:300 begitu. Tapi the bigger issue is that what kind of doctors actually are we talking about? Kalau one psychiatrist to 400, is it one, or you want one surgeon to 400?
Kalau general doctor,
yeah, macam tu. So it depends on the population begitu. Like what type of doctor suits this place begitu. I know it's sangat difficult to kasih zoom in begitu, but that's one thing. And then number 2 tu, sometimes the data tu we're not sure whether they are capture, is it government doctors or termasuk juga private begitu, ataupun yang in between macam tu.
Adakah the ratio ataupun the workload lah itself disebabkan oleh memang rakyat Malaysia banyak orang sakit?
Can you repeat that one?
Workload dia. Sebab ratio kita tidak kisahlah, sebab ada yang sihat, ada yang sakit kan.
Betul.
Tapi the number of patients that the hospital receive, adakah dia luar biasa berbanding dengan negara lain? So I can imagine kalau satu negara tu dia ada 100 doktor, Malaysia pun 100 doktor. Tapi workload orang yang di negara lain kurang daripada Malaysia sebab orang Malaysia patient dia banyak.
Okay. I think to simplify this one is not an easy one, but I would say like this. The reason why we have banyak orang pesakit yang sakit tenat ataupun come in with very very bad conditions kan, I think it is because number 1, kita punya public health care ini is not well appreciated, I think. Public health, maksud saya dari segi pencegahan, benda-benda macam epidemiologi dia. Because when we talk about patients yang flooding in the hospitals, remember hospitals is always a place where patients seek treatment. You don't go to hospital untuk prevent something. Rarely lah macam tu. So the problem is that kenapa banyak orang sakit is because the prevention part ni kita sudah, I think we have done what we can in our situation untuk bantu. Tapi masyarakat sendiri yang maybe kurang mengambil inisiatif untuk menjaga diri, probably lah. Yes. For good example, you go to a Western country, or for example in Russia where I studied last time, a patient, kalau kau tanya dia, kau sakit apa? He will tell you, saya ada penyakit begini, stage berapa, begini berapa peratus, begini. Dan ubat saya makan adalah ubat A berapa miligram, ubat B berapa miligram. So they really know about their disease, means that they really care. Kita zoom in kepada tempat kita macam mana.
Mana sakit sini.
Even though yang sudah lama sakit pun, dah tahulah doktor cakap saya sakit buah pinggang. Hati. Dah tahulah, adalah dia bilang. You would have this kind of patients.
Is it the education level of our people?
Yes and no. Education, I wouldn't say it's bad because mostly our country, kalau compare dekat Southeast Asia, we are one of the literate countries. Semua orang pergi sekolah, most of us complete compulsory education, which is Form 5, begitu kan. Tapi I think it's just the mentality, I guess, towards health. Yeah. Maybe because our healthcare is RM1, maybe, I don't know. Yeah,
backfire.
Macam, how to say, you only will appreciate things when it is of a certain value. RM1 doesn't carry much value, does it? So maybe one
so
of the
we
things.
miss the system missed out that psychological punya side of.
I mean, the system means good, kan?
Yeah.
Really helps the people. Yeah. Cuma itulah, it backfires in a way lah. Begitu.
So workload is one of the things that contribute to mental health issue among doctors.
Yeah.
Adakah dia spesifik kepada different field?
Exactly.
Trauma.
Betul.
Oncology.
Different specialities. There's many studies. Different specialities perceive stress in a different way and process stress in a different way. So there are some specialities yang dia punya doctors feel X amount of stress, and other specialties they feel lower or higher stress, macam tu.
Dan saya ada satu benda yang saya tanya-tanya lah, whether the experience of going through medical studies for years and then pursuing more specialties akan ubah personality seseorang, sebab beban psikologi itu. Because tidak mungkin saya punya personal observation saja lah. Kalau macam dokter yang pakar-pakar sudah kan macam yang susah sudah mau socialize. Sejauh mana kebenaran teori saya ini?
Well, I think when you go through university, I mean, we're talking about the studies now, right? I think it doesn't really matter a lot. Medical or non-medical, you will undergo some form of transformation due to the stress and everything. But maybe some stress that are graphical or emotional in nature, because I've some students yang traumatized tengok trauma, and their perception change. And then lepas tu ada lagi yang had an emotional moment when they are counselling a patient. So this will shape that person's personality.
In death lagi kan?
Yes, exactly. Macam tu.
I can
But
imagine.
specialists yang tidak, ada juga yang pandai socialize, ada yang tidak. I think it's in between.
Depends on
the
your
person,
own personality
begitu.
lah bang.
But most of the time tidak socialize is probably because penat sudah. Balik rumah saya, okay, I just want to go home and sleep. Gitu.
Between practitioner and in education, mana yang lebih membebankan?
I would say bebanan dia different. Yeah, one is more probably physically demanding
for
hospital lah, because you have to physically move around, do procedures. Kalau kau surgeon lagi lah, you have to stand for hours, emergency lagi, tarik tulak, tekan. Educator pula, you bring your work home. So begitu. So imagine if you're a lecturer, medical lecturer, so you have this one together. For example, macam saya pagi, saya di faculty, settle semua benda, shift saya petang, and then I won't call sampai malam. Macam tu, then the next morning, I balik pergi faculty, have another meeting, lecture, continue lagi petang. Something like this. I mean, it's different. I wouldn't say what I experience is the same as others, but it's just one small example. Yeah.
Apa benda yang kau mau orang tahu yang tidak romantik pasal doktor?
Is the profession even romantic to begin with? Salah
So,
Grey's Anatomy lah ni. Apa dia? Macam mana?
Sebab kau save life dan
is that romantic? I don't think so.
Ya, dia macam ada mulia sikit lah.
Oh, okay. Nobility.
Yeah.
What is not romantic or not noble? Macam mana?
Noble.
Macam mana rephrase balik? I don't really know how
to. Apa aspek pekerjaan doktor yang sebenarnya tidak semegah yang disangka?
I see. Okay. Probably the fact that the simplest one would be you would actually, when you start off, you are probably the bottom of the chain, the hospital, and you deal with a lot of things that you think a doctor would never do. Contoh dia, membersihkan, what you call that, bedpan pesakit. You deal with, kencing, najis, and then doing work that you don't see on television. In television, they're depicted as cool, hero, saving lives, but other than saving lives, you do other things that, like macam janitorial work or clerical work pun ada, something like this lah.
How about kau punya layanan yang kau dapat daripada pihak atasan, yang adakah yang bikin kau yang hina betul loh saya rasa kena layan oleh superior?
I mean, there are times, I mean, most bila kau start off, you would have this kind of thing lah, because as I said, it's the expectation. So when the expectation is not met, so usually the frustration that is, dilepaskan sama kau tu, it will come in a form that is very degrading.
Degrading is the word.
Macam, instead of kata-kata constructive criticism, you would get insults, you would get, things like this, probably. And unfortunately, these things, walaupun awareness is getting, better, like, we should treat everyone better, but it still does happen. And I'm not lying to say that it still happens. So,
because it's human nature. Betul. Kan? Ada orang yang tidak dapat kontrol anger dia juga. So, does it contribute to mental health issue juga?
Exactly, mesti lah. Being abused. I mean, how to say, because everyone is like, when you think that you become a doctor, you immediately get with the title, the status. So you probably have that thinking that, saya patut dihormati, saya patut dibegini. But in reality, kau diherdik, kau dicaci, bukan sejak daripada your superiors, sometimes from your clients as well. So you probably yang tidak dapat adapt ni, culture shock, then think, what am I doing with my life? So that's
sepatutnya bila saya dapat gelaran doktor, saya happy sebab saya berada di status yang lebih tinggi.
Exactly,
orang rupanya tidak kena hormat. Sama juga, apalah guna saya belajar. Something like that.
So that's something that we try to instill in our students nowadays, humility and the pragmatism. Not life is not a bed of roses, this kind of thing. Macam tu lah.
So doktor different challenge. Kalau medical doctor macam mana? Diorang punya mental challenge bahagian mana? Is that really just the study, or any other aspect yang contribute to mental health issue
You mean for
medical student?
medical student? Other than the study, you mean? I think this is what I see from my students nowadays. The need FOMO, fear of missing out. Because you see, I follow my students on IG, they follow me back. So it gives me an insight on how they think and how they, operate nowadays. Kan? So, like, what's the in thing nowadays for teens? I mean, for young adults is the ability to travel, the ability to enjoy the little luxuries of the life. Yeah, bergaya, makan di tempat-tempat yang bagus. So when you are missing out on that, it feels that you don't have a purpose for life. Some of them can feel like this, macam tu. So why no kawan-kawan saya yang lain yang sudah start bekerja, because medical school is 5 to 6 years. Normal degree, I mean other degrees they are like 3 to 4 years maybe.
3 years.
3 years or 4 years sudah kerja and they can start earning, start enjoying life. Di sana lah yung kan some people will, right? Not all, but FOMO tu is real lah among these students.
Apa yang membezakan personality orang yang ambil medical dengan bidang-bidang yang lain?
Personality, I would say adaptive. Yeah. Because the nature of medical studies and the medical world, dia selalu berubah-ubah. So even like in their studies kan, we try to give them scenarios yang memang ada banyak challenges, multifaceted. So they really need to learn how to be adaptive, change according to the tempo of apa-apa yang akan berlaku. So I think that's one thing, adaptive lah. Yeah.
How do you see the Gen Z punya generation?
Sekejap, Gen Z ni umur berapa?
Dari 97. Lahir 97 ke atas.
97 ke atas, okay.
Yeah.
So how do I see
them facing this challenge? Sebab ramai yang cakap Gen Z adalah the weakest generation.
Okay. I have to admit, I was one of them who thinks that way mula-mula lah. Macam, you guys are, lembik lah, this kind of thing kan. But then I realized, why even there are generational classifications to begin with? So it's like, macam kita ni apa? Kita ni millennials kan. So kita, if we are apples, so they are oranges. So you can't compare an apple with an orange. So by right, in my opinion, I don't think it's very fair to say that pada zaman saya begitu. Pada zaman kamu begini, kenapa kamu tidak boleh macam begini di zaman saya? Because the whole atmosphere of the era is very different.
Just different.
So maybe that's how the world is shaping them begitu. And the best way we can actually deal with it is to not judge and to not compare, but probably to sit down and understand. I mean, that's what adults are supposed to do, right? So I think that's the best way to understand why are they behaving in that way. Macam itulah.
Dari pemerhatian kau, saya tidak tahu kalau kamu ada interview one by one all the students dan ask this question, why medical?
Interesting enough, this is a compulsory component sebelum masuk faculty. In fact, every year kami akan have interviews for calon-calon Semenanjung dan calon-calon Sabah Sarawak before diorang diterima masuk dalam fakulti. So memang soalan tu is a staple. Yeah, so
usually what's the answer?
Usually answer dia either cliche, which is saya ingin menjadi doktor untuk membantu begini-begini, okay, which I think is okay, it's good, but try to not answer it in a way yang dia sangat predictable, I'd say lah. Then number 2 answer is dorongan atau pujukan atau paksaan ibu bapa, okay. Yang ketiga, minat saya sendiri. Maksudnya dia minat to profession tapi not necessarily mau membantu orang.
Just minat
sebab it's cool, begitu. Nombor 4, I like this one because dia jujur. Because I think it's a place where I can make money. So, which is
Fair.
yeah, fair enough. Money is unfortunately king,
Yeah.
okay, on earth, okay. So, if you want to make that as your motivation, then you're not, lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Then you would be motivated
True.
until the end, macam tu. I think it's most important that the students understand their own motivation. Yeah. Kalau kau rasa your parents are the ones pushing you, are you motivated to fulfill their dream? If then why not?
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
macam tu.
Bergantung lah, I guess. Sebab
Yeah, exactly.
kalau the motivation is untuk dapat tu gelaran, then kalau cukup kuat sampai kau boleh go through the process,
Exactly.
then why not kan?
Yes, betul. But then again, it's always like a situation in that every batch tu ada lebih kurang 5 to 7% akan fail atau drop out.
5 to 7%.
So like if we have like 100 people satu batch, so 5 to 7 akan quit.
Not bad.
Yeah, begitu.
Not bad.
It's expected lah. Because you realize that the journey is not something that you expected. Begitu.
Kalau yang masa kamu study di Russia ada mental punya challenge
I
juga
don't
lah?
think so. Well, mental challenges.
I mean,
Pada masa tu mungkin dia tidak dilabel sebagai mental challenge lah.
it's just norm.
It's just, oh, this is life. Macam tu. I don't think, I mean, same goes to you lah. Masa kita study dulu, I don't think this term mental issue or mental health is ever there.
Yeah,
Tiada.
yes. Walaupun kita dengar tiba-tiba ada orang teriak masa exam.
Yeah, terus we would just label it as anything else, kan?
Yeah.
Tapi ni sekarang even you burn out is
Mental
health.
Yeah.
You sikit mental health.
Yeah. I want to know your view on that. Yang macam mana kita over diagnose kita punya society.
I think it's a human nature to justify. You want to know why is this happening to me. Contohnya lah kan, best example, COVID. Masa COVID dulu, apa simptom yang semua orang bilang confirm COVID? Which is yang demam, flu-like illness, begitu kan. And then bila benda tu sudah like semakin pulih kan, how do you explain all the other symptoms macam sentiasa penat, period tidak sekata, rasa macam foggy. Everyone tried, this is COVID. So you're trying to justify why is this thing happening to me. Dulu tiada pun, sekarang tiada, mesti ni COVID. So I think this is the human kind of mentality. Yeah, to justify.
Yeah, I guess kita semakin educated. Google.
In a way, yeah.
It's easy to find information from Google.
Betul.
From ChatGPT now, yang
paling famous sekarang.
How do you find that in terms of dealing with patients? Contohnya macam yang saya sudah ChatGPT, ini saya punya result doktor, kau tinggal rawat saya lagi. Adakah begitu?
Ada, memang selalu ada macam tu.
So
yeah.
Adakah dia membantu ataupun menyusahkan?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Especially kalau yang if you are the kind who is open to discussion. So with your educated information yang kau sudah baca, but you're still open to discussion, then we will be able to tell you that yes, that is begitulah. Cuma where I come in is that I've seen so many cases like this, so how to interpret that information, dia akan menjadi begini. So betul lah apa kau rasa ataupun no, it's something else. Begitu. Tapi problemnya kalau itu orang sudah memang bent on apa yang disuruh baca tu, itulah saya. So the one we unfortunately cannot change. And also in medicine you cannot force people. Kalau itulah dia percaya, so you have to like somehow go along with it. Yeah. But to a point yang dia tidak akan merosakkan dirinya lah. Something begitu. Yeah.
Kita punya orang lah. I mean, saya mau tahu juga yang kalau ada orang yang mau study medical, apa amaran yang kamu boleh bagi?
Amaran lah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a difficult one. Actually today baru kami melawat Jabatan Pelajaran Negeri Sabah. We have a program in the faculty. One of the ways untuk meningkatkan lagi peluang Sabahan untuk menjadi doktor. Like for example, for our faculty kan, up to now kami sudah melahirkan 1,400 lebih graduan doktor. Okay.
Sejak
dibuka. Okay, sampai 2024. Tapi out of this 1.4K, only about 300 plus are actually from Sabah. So that's around 30%. So that means ada banyak lagi peluang Sabahan begitu kan. So one of the ways is that kami buka satu program, it's called Prospek Program Program Sejahtera Masyarakat melalui professional means. So what we did was we went to rural areas, identify students yang B40 untuk menjadi to groom lah, untuk masuk asasi, and then hopefully continue jadi doktor lah begitu. So what we see is that memang kita underprivileged lah, how to say.
Is it because of financial factor?
A lot of things, Steve. A lot of things. Because I would say a student kalau di Sabah yang bukan dari bandara, I would say, kalau lah dia dapat 8A kan, atau 7, 6A begitu di Sabah itself, it's probably equivalent to 10 atau 11A di Semenanjung. Because in Semenanjung, you have so many things that are served on a silver platter untuk kau, untuk berjaya. Now I realize that for someone to berjaya, you cannot say that I did it all on my own. No. Apart from God, a lot of things enable you to be successful. Number satu, your parents itself. Duit diorang segala-gala begitu. And then number dua, your teachers. Kalau cikgu kau sendiri kalau di pedalaman, you don't have proper teachers or motivated teachers. Ini juga the same thing I raised to Jabatan Pelajaran tadi. No matter how many times we come to the kampung to give motivation, but if they themselves cannot create an environment yang boleh nurture student tu untuk mau berjaya from all factors. Yalah, parents only harap kau mau kerja kampung, plus lagi cikgu yang low motivation atau not so qualified, plus lagi dengan prasarana yang tidak ada. So there's a lot of things macam tu.
So I understand what you meant, yang 8A di Sabah bersamaan dengan, sebab dengan challenge yang kita ada, we can still achieve that.
Yeah, so that is why you cannot say that pelajar Sabah ni tidak berapa cemerlang sebab tidak boleh dapat 11A because you don't see this kind of thing.
Dia ibarat pergi lomba lari, orang Sabah pakai kaki ayam, yang lain pakai spike, dan dia nomor 2.
Yes, kan? Begitu. So that is why kalau kau tengok prospektus Fakulti Perubatan Universiti Malaysia Sabah, pointer dia untuk masuk fakulti is 3.5 CGPA. Tempat lain 3.8, 3.9, macam tu.
Tapi adakah dia untuk Sabahan saja?
Yeah, it is to I wouldn't say it is for Sabahans, but it is designed to help yang student yang tadi tu, yang underprivileged, yang kalau dia diberi more things, dia boleh achieve more lah.
Apa objektif dia untuk banyakkan Sabahan? Adakah untuk elakkan brain drain? Ataupun
not, I wouldn't say brain drain. I think it's more of turnover rate. Satu. Sebab as I said in the beginning kan, doktor kita cukup. Okay. Cuma masalahnya bila kena posting pergi Sabah, especially yang daerah-daerah kurang-kurang famous ni, yang susah, all this kind of thing. No one wants to stay there.
So mau yang Sabah yang memang tahan lasak, kira
so
lah,
or something like yang macam one of the comments yang probably we dengarkan, kalau tak suka saya, I am doktor dari luar, kalau tak suka saya, suruhlah orang kampung kau jadi doktor, this kind of thing. Okay, so that's what trying to do. Tapi there comes again, kalau doktor kampung ini dia sudah merasakan segala benda yang bagus di bandar, FOMO, mau stay di bandar,
Stay.
mau stay somewhere di luar, bercita-cita lebih besar, tidak mau balik kampung. That's another problem. So it's difficult to
Multifactorial,
control begitu. So that is why untuk meninggikan lagi chance tu diorang akan kembali ke Sabah dan work in the place where you come from. So that is the reason why.
Yeah. So ideally nisbah doktor Sabah dan dari negeri lain kena naik lagi lah.
In a sense. Just for information, back in 2014, ideal is 1 to 400 dah. Back in 2014, kita punya nisbah di Sabah ialah 1 to 1,400. Dalam 10 tahun, 2024, kita punya ratio turun pergi 1 in 870. Last year, 1 in 740 ke 750. So the gap is improving. Begitu.
Tapi doktor tu overall lah, general
ini doktor overall. So basically I think we can't be too selective kan. So I think it's good enough kalau any doctor to 400 kan, assuming that this doctor boleh settle semua benda lah. Begitu.
Yeah. Let's go to public health. Apa study yang perlu kita buat untuk public health Sabah saja?
Well, I would start off by this disclaimer. Saya bukan pakar public health, okay? Saya pakar kecemasan. Cuma I can only comment in my capacity lah. Study for the state?
For the state. Yang kita perlukan, data yang kita perlukan, public health data yang kita perlukan untuk Sabah specific. Is it awareness? Or is it itu penyakit berjangkit, apa dia punya factor?
I think what is lacking is the proper documentation of benda-benda ni. What I'm trying to say is that thanks to our geography, kan, benda yang boleh dibuat di Semenanjung yang memudahkan data collection untuk apa-apalah benda public health. NCD ka, non-communicable disease ka, infectious disease ka, it's easier to get because of you have more manpower, your terrain is more forgiving. Sini mau siapa, kalau saya dari KK, saya mau kena suruh pergi Telupit, macam mana? Like it's a burden. Then perhubungan pun tidak bagus. It really gives a challenge to public health.
Apa jenis data yang kita kurang di Sabah?
I think generally data tu ada, cuma dia tidak menyeluruh. Dia tidak boleh tangkap semua population. Semua data-data yang ada tu lah macam tu. Because yalah, kita kan for example penduduk, kalau di kampung-kampung tu berselerak. And then lepas tu untuk sensus masyarakat pun saya rasa susah mau dapat.
Susah. Yeah.
Apakan lagi data kesihatan. Contohnya macam ada satu kampung ni yang baru-baru saya pergi medical evacuation di Kota Marudu. Doesn't sound really far, right? Kota Marudu. Tapi dia, kau dari mana?
Saya Tampar-Uli,
okay. Nanti saya melalu cakap benda salah.
Okay.
This kampung, dia kan, kami arrive daripada KK, nama dia Kampung Sonsogon Magandai.
Ya?
Yeah, I hope I get the name right lah. So dia ni, apparently kalau dia dari kampung ni, mau pergi hospital Kota Marudu, jalan darat, 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. Dan jalan dia memang like macam dari atas kan, kau tidak nampak jalan langsung. Then suddenly, on top of the hill tu, ada satu kampung terpacak di sana. And dalam satu kampung tu, ada satu handphone je. Ketua kampung yang pegang. Making things worse, di rumah ketua kampung tu je ada line. Sebab dia di ujung sekali kan. Jadi di sana je ada line. So, and people still live there, and they don't really mind. I mean, I cannot,
Ya, the infrastructure yang kita ada ni pun sangat membantu juga kan.
Ya, so contohnya, kalau itu baru satu kampung, I'm sure ada lagi banyak-banyak kampung yang begitu. So data from these places, you can't really get macam tu.
Ya, kalau di UMS lah, the school yang you are working in kan, apa jenis public health punya study yang rancak dibuat?
I see. So kalau for Sabah in general, memang yang niche kita di UMS, I think for our public health department is very strong. So what they are dia punya apa nama dia tu focus right now is TB. TB is
Specific
memang specific disease. TB is something that I think the state is trying really hard to eradicate. Because benda ni memang
sepatutnya tiada sudah di.
I mean ada lah. But it's always labeled as a third world country disease. Kalau kau ada TB means you're poor. Begitu. Which is unfortunately somehow true lah.
And there are a few more diseases yang di Sabah lebih tinggi.
Yes, for example, thalassemia. Okay, but ini not much of a. I mean the apa tu? Dia punya focus not so much on that one. So I think TB for now and malaria, because malaria nowadays I think dia punya ada satu kuman gitu. Yeah, dia punya
parasite.
Dia punya oh my god, dia punya microorganism. It's supposed to be only with monkeys. It's supposed to be monkey to monkey dia hanya prevalent. Tapi di Sabah it starts to jump to human. So it becomes a zoonotic infection. So it is a new kind of thing. So like they are trying to understand. Even we got like a grant with Japan under the SATREPS lah. So it's a 10 million grant for us to help to investigate lah kenapa dia lompat, what is the implications.
Tapi kebanyakan jangkitan pun sebenarnya malaria pun originally memang the old one pun dari monkey juga kan? Makak.
Yeah, I mean yes, I mean they are macam tu. Tapi yang kuman itu, yang dia punya falciparum itu, okay? So dia tu apa tu kalau yang malaria yang biasa yang falciparum Plasmodium falciparum and Plasmodium knowlesi. Ini dua benda. So Plasmodium falciparum is the one yang biasa kita temu, yang memang daripada itulah. Tapi knowlesi ni memang tidak pernah jarang dijumpai di manusia. That's the reason. Memang dia daripada binatang ke manusia, manusia ke manusia jarang lah. Okay, begitu. Cuma masalahnya kalau selain daripada falciparum ni ada benda lain sudah boleh tinggal, maksudnya you have to be more alert lah. Maybe the current drugs they aren't good for knowlesi, contoh begitu.
So TB, malaria, let's go to thalassemia sebab saya ada isu dengan ini. Saya pernah buat satu konten. Saya nampak satu konten orang yang dia punya statement adalah kawin campur pun tidak juga kena kalau Tuhan tidak kasih ataupun
tidak kasih penyakit.
Tidak kasih. Tapi kalau dapat pun itu adalah cobaan Tuhan dia bilang. So I made a video. So this is very unscientific thinking and very dangerous saya bilang, sebab terang-terangan sudah terbukti yang kawin sesama family yang relatif akan meninggikan ni benda saya bilang. Sebab betul lah kan, so thalassemia case in Sabah is one of the highest. Betul. And salah satu faktor yang contribute adalah ini bukan tabiat kebolehan untuk fenomena kawin relatif ni lah. So ada apa-apa tindakan yang KKM kerajaan buat untuk dalam aspek menangani dalam aspek perkawinan?
Okay, I think it's very important to note that thalassemia is a genetic disease. Okay, dia berasal daripada mutation one of the genes yang recessive, maksudnya gene yang maksudnya kalau father ada gene ini, mother ada gene ini, anak tu akan mendapat penyakit inilah. So maksudnya anak tu adalah 25% anak akan mendapat thalassemia. R besar, R kecil, yes betul. So there's a 25% chance untuk carrier dengan carrier. Kalau bapa
25%.
carrier, Kalau carrier bapa, mama carrier. So bila diorang kahwin, cum gitu. 1 in 4 tu akan thalassemia.
25%, yeah.
So in a way, I agree with statement orang tu lah. Dia bilang kalau Tuhan mau bagi ya. But tidak salah menggunakan knowledge yang kita ada untuk mitigate the risk. So how do we mitigate the risk? So knowing that it's a genetic disease, I think it's good kalau Sabahans, especially native Sabahans, KDMRs, okay, sebelum kahwin, please take a thalassemia screening, mother and father. So bila kau tahu kau carrier ke tidak, you can plan. Or at least I think planning is important. I know in a sense that anak tu kurniaan Tuhan. Yes, by all means. But you can't be like dapat then baru kau menggelabah begitu. So at least you have a plan kan begitu. Sama juga macam people. Kalau saya dapat anak lelaki, my plan is this. Anak perempuan is like this. So they have to have this plan begitu.
So TB, malaria, thalassemia, apa lagi yang hanya di Sabah yang agak tinggi? Ini
I think diseases. That is the main ones lah. And satu lagi lah, ini penyakit berjangkit. We call this
filariasis.
Filariasis more to African countries. Melioidosis. Melioidosis, ini kita panggil penyakit I forgot the Malay one. Tanah something.
Untut?
Bukan. No. Dia ni bawaan daripada tanah. I don't remember the Malay name.
Ada saya dengar.
So kalau ada satu penyakit kalau kamu dengar kencing tikus, ini leptospirosis. Ini satu melioidosis.
Lebih kurang lah. Bakteria dari tanah.
Bakteria, two different things. Leptospirosis tu commonly dicakap dibawa oleh tikus kan. Tapi dia boleh juga didapati dari mana-mana. But melioidosis ni dia banyak sebab dia hidup di tanah, bekas daripada apa-apalah, daripada najis binatang dan ataupun tempat tu memang endemik dia tinggal di sana.
So itu pun Sabah tinggi.
Sabah quite banyak sebab maybe because number one, activity agriculture is very prevalent and proper practices in agriculture tu tidak di practice. Maksudnya tidak memakai glove, tidak memakai kasut, benda macam ni lah.
STD.
Okay.
Di mana Sabah berada kedudukan?
Unfortunately, I do not know that one.
Mental health pun saya dengar dia agak tinggi sebenarnya. Sebab saya interview doktor dari Bukit Padang hari itu, dan Sabah is one of the highest.
Yeah, I think maybe because we have kos hidup, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, sebenarnya teori adalah kita berada di survival phase.
Yeah.
Financially.
So maybe that one. And all other things, the fact that kita ni dianaktirikan, maybe.
Politik.
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Kan?
Yeah. There are a lot of things. Yeah. So STD, I'm not sure, but I think it's a timely and relevant issue with the generation FOMO and YOLO.
FOMO and YOLO.
So we have this YOLO behavior. It's a masyarakat. This generation semua berani to cuba benda-benda baru.
Yeah.
So this kind of things and pergaulan is getting more borderless, I would say. So anything goes nowadays.
Dengan internet kan, social media
and everything lah. Yeah, wouldn't be wrong to say that. Yeah.
Is there any concern that you think need to be addressed when it comes to doctors and medical students yang kita perlu sedar as a masyarakat?
Concerns
mentally. Siapa yang kita perlu buat, apa yang kita sepatutnya aware, yang nampaknya masyarakat kita tidak aware.
From doctor perspektif terhadap masyarakat.
Ya, dalam masyarakat, doctor's perspektif lah. Adakah masyarakat kita ini masih lagi memandang dokter punya mental health ini sesuatu yang jarang ataupun sesuatu yang luar biasa? So, dia sudah ada dokter, dia ada pangkat yang tinggi, kenapa mau stres lagi?
Well, I think it's very important to say that doctors are humans too. So we are definitely susceptible untuk mendapat mental health challenges. And lebih-lebih lagi dengan the population nowadays kan, yang lebih berani untuk menyuarakan pendapat. So I think there's more arguments, more chances to clash. And I think that leads to all this. I think it comes back to expectations. Yeah, because when macam you expect your patient to be in a certain way, you expect your clients to be in a certain way, okay, macam tu. But they don't do it. So number one, you feel disappointed. Kenapa dia nak makan ubat? Maybe. Kenapa dia cakap balik? Kenapa dia tak pandai faham apa saya explain? Kenapa dia tidak jaga kesihatan? Plus the verbal insults yang maybe ada and everything. So I think doctors are humans too. So be kind to us.
Good. I also wonder, kalau kamu pernah ada ni ayat, kenapa Bani orang-orang sebani tidak pandai jaga kesehatan? Tengok kami penat sudah rawat kamu. This might be the message untuk orang Sabah yang tidak kisah kesehatan lah, merokok, yang sudah tahu exercise sangat penting tapi tidak juga.
Yes, I think this one is one of the top concerns of healthcare. Bukan saja di Sabah, I would say the whole nation. Sebab yalah, as we discussed earlier, masalah healthcare Malaysia tu, our system is very heavily burdened. Satu, I wouldn't say staff tidak cukup, perjawatan tidak cukup.
So staff memang sebenarnya bukan contributor,
because we have staff but there are not enough slots for them to work. Faham tak? Because slots means more money. Begitu. Macam begitulah.
Means sebenarnya doktor cukup.
On paper. Yeah. On paper.
Cuma kerja, skop kerja yang tidak dapat cover all the
because
needs.
like macam as I said, if you just take all the doctors in Malaysia, kau kira satu-satu, terus kau kasih kali with population. I think
asal doktor
boleh. Tapi masalah dia, yang doktor bekerja di dalam, for example, hospital, memang tidak cukup. Sebab perjawatan yang diwujudkan untuk staf ini tidak dibuka untuk mencukupkan kuota itu. Sebab kenapa?
So by
duit tidak cukup.
Duit tidak cukup.
Because means you let's say, for example, Hospital Queen 2. We have 400 beds. Okay, we have 400 beds, but not all beds are dibuka sebenarnya. Macam at one time tu, we have only 100 beds. Kenapa kita hanya boleh buka 100 bed? Contohnya begitu. Because we can only mampu ada, sebab yang staff ada ni, yang tengah di-employ oleh Queen 2, hanya mampu untuk menampung 100 orang. If you kasih buka sampai 400,
dari sudut number of doctors.
Dari sudut begitulah. Dan juga nurses, dan juga medical assistants. So this is the problem. So orang tanyalah, kenapa tidak wujudkan perjawatan baru? Banyak pandai komplain begini. Tapi masalahnya, bila kau wujudkan I'm trying to understand from the perspective of administrator dan juga policy makers. So when you wujudkan a slot or jawatan, so that means you are prepared to be committed untuk bayar gaji staff ni sampailah dia berhenti.
So dalam financial juga membantu, menyumbang lah.
So I assume the pengarah will have like a budget for the year. So dia kena kira lah, kalau saya begini, kalau saya ambil satu staff baru, saya buka satu slot baru, will I have enough to buy medication?
Yeah, betul juga.
So it's a very difficult thing to say. Yeah. And why I think this problem is perpetuating, setiap tahun kita run with deficit. I mean, budget negara kan. Memang setiap tahun pun kita berhutang dengan IMF pun kan.
Adakah disebabkan oleh kerajaan Malaysia punya subsidi dalam kesihatan sangat kau-kau.
I think so. If you want to compare healthcare di sini dengan probably Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Sweden,
Norway.
yang memang healthcare is free, education is free. But you must know, tax is 50%. Something like this. So you have to, the amount that you receive must be equal to the number you give. This is the part yang
Tricky,
I think Malaysia not ready. Kenapa aku nak bagi begitu banyak? Aku kan kerajaan, aku kan rakyat Malaysia. Kerajaan patut sayang saya. No, this kind of mentality.
True, dan bukan senang untuk ubah ni mindset. And then the politik punya aspek pun, kalau kau senang-senang ubah polisi, next election kau tiada sedar. So they have to like maintain all this yang benda yang polisi yang merugikan.
Betul. No one wants to be the unpopular one.
Jarang. No one lah.
So itulah kami cakap, like, you know, to change that RM1 is very hard. No one would dare to do that. So kalau dia buat begitu, confirm kalapi pilihan raya.
Tapi sebenarnya itu kita perlu kan?
I think so. Because how to say?
Untuk
sustain
kita ubah tu perbelanjaan daripada subsidi pergi quality.
I think if you manage to, you know, people will say macam mana lah warga tua, macam mana lah yang B40. I would say dorang lah still protected with RM1. Yang M40 and T20 tu boleh
pergi
lah
juga berbaris.
Pergi juga yang RM1. Senseg juga mau pergi sana. Then I was like, kalau kau push it up to even RM3 or RM5, if you can spend boba for RM9, RM10, RM5, I don't think it's an issue. Bagi saya lah. And you don't go to the hospital like you shop. You go only when you're sick, right?
I have this interesting theory lah, as someone who sell health insurance kan. Kalau yang B40 saja yang pergi hospital kerajaan dan M40 kena wajib ambil insurans supaya orang tidak payah guna tu subsidi. Adakah dia membantu?
Membantu siapa?
Membantu the sustainability of our healthcare system lah. Sebab daripada semua orang pergi hospital kerajaan semata-mata untuk bayar RM1, why not bahagi pergi private hospital? By buying medical card macam tu. Adakah kau rasa dia akan membantu?
I think in a way it could help. Satu, dia decongest hospital sebab you can really concentrate on people yang cannot afford. But at the same time, hospital swasta yang benefit from this medical insurance should be more dia punya CSR tu harus dipertingkatkan lagi lah. Maksudnya dia harus participate dalam, maybe dia nak derma alat baru kepada hospital because of that. Something like this lah.
Saya imagine kalau contohlah kerajaan spend 1 billion satu tahun just for the subsidy untuk tanggung rakyat bayar RM1, selebihnya kerajaan tanggungkan sekarang. And then let's say semua orang sedar kalau kau M40 kau mau jauh daripada hospital kerajaan, just subscribe to medical insurance. Dan setiap kali kau sakit, kau terus direct pergi Gleneagles, KPJ, JMC. Adakah dia akan membantu mengurangkan perbelanjaan kerajaan? Sebab the perbelanjaan will be from insurance company sudah.
I would probably, before answering that, I would probably ask itu duit itu adakah dia akan disalurkan semula kepada perbelanjaan negara? Then it would probably help if it's in that way lah. Maksudnya tidak semestinya salur bulat-bulat hidup-hidup begitu. Maybe dalam bentuk pelaburan or something like that. Then yes, I would think so lah.
Tapi tidakkah dia mengurangkan perbelanjaan kerajaan?
Yes, mengurangkan per se, yes, because direct causality. Kurang pesakit means kurang belanja. Simply put, boleh lah begitu.
Tapi kalau the amount of income yang private hospital dapat from the company, insurance company, kalau dia reinvest pergi kerajaan would be better lah kan. Itu
I
maksud kau
would
lah.
think so lah begitu, because kalau dia keep around in sektor swasta dan tidak what you call that apa nama itu duit tu tidak rolling dalam kerajaan untuk help, so I think the problem would still be the same, cuma dia progress lambat lah. I mean dia tidak akan crash cepat, dia akan crash pelan-pelan, because still the beban is a lot. Masih because lagi. B40 is a big group.
Still a big group.
And most of the people yang sakit-sakit teruk ni daripada golongan B40.
Yeah. Sebab nutrition kurang maybe kan.
Multifaceted. Betul. Because kalau M40 tu kalau paling-paling pun sakit pun yang ringan-ringan kan, because kau terjaga lifestyle kau mungkin a bit better, kau more educated. I don't know. In a way lah.
In reality dia bukan black and white juga lah, dia macam ada faktor-faktor lain juga kau nak consider.
Exactly, because I can only comment this from one way. Mesti ada banyak orang yang tidak setuju with what I say, because I can only see that from this angle je.
Because my initial theory is like that lah, yang kalau semua yang mampu ambil medical insurance, tidak akan sesak hospital kerajaan dan tidak akan bertambah perbelanjaan kerajaan untuk subsidize.
Ataupun in another way, kita boleh emulate macam other country punya national health policy. Dia ada national health insurance.
Yeah. Kerajaan yang bayar.
Kerajaan punya insurance. So basically you pay, so that money will be, so kerajaan is a big insurance provider.
Yeah.
So somewhat like this. It's another way juga.
It's another way, true.
Untuk yang golongan M and T lah begitu. Something like that. Yeah.
Is there any luahan yang kita termiss?
I don't know, I'm generally a very accepting person, jadi saya tidak tahu, saya tidak pasti saya mau meluah apa lagi. So I mean in general, I think from both sides ada dia punya grouses lah. Masyarakat perlu, I think, to be more better in a sense, health wise. Memang perlu, you have to be more educated and taking your health seriously in a way lah begitu. And doctors on the other hand, you cannot be too judgmental to the patient at the same time begitu. And it's very important for you to be humble always. You can't be expecting, doctors are, gods. It's not right lah, for me lah, bagi saya.
Memang dia berlaku kah di kalangan doktor?
Mestilah. Especially when you are at a high position with a lot of money, the devil's temptation, it's very strong.
Saya pernah dengar cerita lah, specialist di Sabah juga, dia boleh reject VIP Sultan TYT lah ataupun menteri. Dia boleh reject kalau dia tidak suka atau kalau dia tidak mau.
Well, I'm not sure kalau dia berani reject TYT.
Bukanlah TYT, someone yang VIP lah.
I think okay lah. I mean,
dalam sebenarnya pikiran kan, wow, dia sudah berada that level.
That level kan.
So
you don't need to. I mean, boleh. I mean, it can happen begitu. But then it's always the medical oath is always to render assistance and help to those who are needed.
Oh ya.
So itulah
Hippocrates Oath. Dia masih digunakan kan?
Yes.
Untuk modern.
It's a basis, and every year masa graduation student kami, they will need to recite that.
Secara law ataupun secara macam ikrar moral?
The second one, ikrar moral. Yeah. There's no law.
Kau tidak boleh dakwa lah sebenarnya, kalaupun diorang langgar itu.
Well,
it's just ethic, not law.
You boleh dakwa on the grounds of, lah, dari segi law yang lain lah. Macam, I don't know, kalau doktor tu mencabul kau, you ada akta cabul lah.
Dia tidaklah boleh sedakwa atas law Hippocrates law
tidak.
yang kelima.
Tapi dia boleh fall under Medical Negligence Act, benda macam ni lah.
Okay.
Ada benda macam tu.
I see. So saya tidak boleh approach ini law sebagai yang, why doktor, aku salah, sudah aku langgar law yang ketiga.
Tidak. That's why nama dia bukan law.
It's
Hippocrates Oath.
Hippocrates Oath. Yeah. Betul juga.
So that's why dia begitulah. It's just a moral compass on how you should be the true doctor. Begitulah.
I think we've covered a lot already.
I think it's
dalam ini podcast. Apa yang intention saya untuk ini adalah untuk at least bagi orang gambaran kehidupan seorang dokter dan humanize dokter dan bukan kesian lah macam yang empathize lah kita punya struggle and then seglamour manapun dokter itu kita tidak tahu dorang punya struggle dan kadang-kadang saya terfikir yang okay, dia berada di satu level kau tidak boleh imagine macam mana struggle-nya dia untuk capai the level untuk semua orang, so jangan jealous.
Well, I mean jealousy it doesn't look good on anyone lah. I mean I would say that the medical profession is just like any other profession, which demands respect and also demands discipline. Cuma dia special sebab dia sudah diagungkan dari dulu. Itu saja.
Sebab dia save life.
Begitu. Sebab dia save life. Itu je special dia tu. Tapi in my opinion kan macam engineers probably like having the bigger responsibility. Kalau kau bina bangunan atau jambatan yang tidak safe, you can kill 1,000 people at one go. So I mean, it's a matter on perspective. That's why I wouldn't say that doctors are better than the rest. We are equally important. Begitu je.
Mungkin on the spot lah, they're safe.
On the spot lah gitu. But one might argue, tapi untuk engineer selamat 1,000 orang tu, doktor tu kena selamatkan engineer tu dulu, so dia lagi kuat. Chicken and egg lah.
So, you brought something.
Oh, yeah. So apparently
Q dia bahkan ketara ni.
So saya baru dari Asian Federation of Cardiologists punya conference. So I was in Penang. So kebetulan while we were talking about this podcast, so ini antara keluaran famous di Penang lah.
Oh, makanan.
Yeah. So I don't know what to get. So makanan is the easiest.
Universal.
Everyone likes food. Food is life. Life is food.
Okay, sampai tunjuk lah sedikit mas. Ini dia punya unboxing. So ini adalah Ondo. Wow.
So ini kononnya dorang bilang premium pineapple tart. Apparently.
Pineapple tart, my favorite. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So dengan itu berakhir kita punya podcast. Mungkin kita boleh bincang lagi lain kali untuk topik-topik kesihatan lah, yang memang diperlukan. So this is one of the topics yang I would like to bagi tahu semua orang lah. Kesihatan mental, science, spiritual dan kehidupan. So thank you very much, Dr. Max.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Bye bye. Berapa jam? 1 jam, yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.